What is up, YouTube world? We are back once again. I hope you are having a fantabulous day. Please download, rate, review, and subscribe below. We have a new addition to our closet abode. If you can see that, that is Rognet Odor punching Jose Batista. It is very small. Maybe I'll take a photo of that later and upload it to the YouTube channel. So, I was watching The Scheme yesterday, the HBO documentary that was just released really Wednesday at midnight, so I guess technically still yesterday. Fantastic documentary. I'd recommend all of you watch it, especially if you're a sports fan starved for content. Go find it. Go buy HBO too. HBO always does incredible content, so it's obviously something you should definitely watch. But I was watching it and I started to think to myself, in combination with the NCAA going downhill financially, given that their executives don't want to take pay cuts. They took 20%, but that's going to be far from enough, as we find ourselves in a fascinating situation where public opinion, court of public opinion matters, but also some of these dudes are making a lot of money. And if they all give back their salaries, then it could actually help keep the business afloat, considering that, again, that's usually what happens in a situation like this, is that we're okay with you. Us as humans are okay with the alphas getting their pay, but the issue comes when the alphas won't distribute it in times of difficulty, shield us and protect us in a situation of such that we're seeing now. And part of that situation comes from the fact that the NCAA has not necessarily had the greatest business model for the longest time. They've continued to hang on to this idea instead of adapting and changing with the times. They've kind of clung on to this amateurism spirit. It usually only brings down the people that get caught, because 99% of the stuff doesn't get caught. The NCAA doesn't want to catch it. They just want to punish it so that they can maintain the spirit of amateurism in their business model, which allows them to not have to pay salaried players. They can then invest the money into themselves, pocket the money for themselves, or invest it back into the universities and the partners with the school. But it made me think about, if we have an opportunity, what would the new NCAA look like? If the NCAA struggles to stay afloat through all this, through next season without any sports, without any training, if they struggle to stay afloat, what would that look like? And I thought to myself, well, if I were constructing a new NCAA, what I would do is I would set up business practices. I would get some wealthy investors to get on board to this idea, which obviously you have to have investors, and investors willing to take this crazy idea and see it work. And what I would offer is $10 million to each university, to the conferences as a whole. If they're not going to have TV deals, make up for their TV deals and try and restart that side, where you take the investors of the universities and the investors of the universities and investors that you can find, you dish out 10. So let's say there's a Big Ten deal. You can offer them $150 million to join your new organization. If you can get a bunch of people on board, and it's usually going to take one to jump on board, then you can potentially restart the NCAA with a new business model. Instead of one that's collapsing, you can offer them the opportunity for money and create a new business model. And what would that business model look like? Well, in my opinion, I would have one, players can go after their likeness. It's what every industry does at this point. It sometimes benefits the best players, sometimes benefits the richest players. It's a fascinating dynamic, but it seems to work out pretty well in every other industry, including basketball, because the commodities usually get paid what they're worth in a literal free market, because they cannot regulate this stuff. They try to regulate it or legislate it out completely, so they're not even concentrated on regulating, they're just concentrated on getting everything out. So players can go for their own likeness like any other industry, because it'll help you get an advantage now and take some of that and then be able to divest it in a long-term investment. You take some of that money now, you're absolutely able to do that. A governing body where equal representation among the conferences, where not just the Power Five, especially in football, where you can get lots of conferences that revenue share. The idea where Each conference has to get a certain amount of money so that we can have real fair competition. Now, the power conferences aren't going to go for that, and the normal conferences are. And unfortunately, the money is with the power conferences, and when they concentrate the money, the business model starts to go downhill. Now, the issue is if we're saving athletic programs, they're going to abide by the rules that are set in place with the new NCAA, which will create revenue sharing in a similar fashion. Not quite to baseball, because baseball is kind of like the model that we have now, except college football is a little bit more out there in that front, but I'd give it more of like an NFL model, but you can profit based on your fan base. And if you invest money and you can compete for the best players, we'll really start to see who are the best of the best programs. A school like San Diego State or a school like UCF can absolutely compete with the top programs because they can essentially have the opportunity to pay the players to come there. It's not a guarantee that it's going to be successful. Like any salary cap sport, you have to get the right players in an open market, and only the best organizations at doing that will be able to get the best players. So again, it's not a totally free market, so they're going to have to figure out how that's going to work as it goes forward. How each individual team is going to be able to compete in a sport that is going to basically give you the resources to compete. Schools can gain advantages based on their sales, which will encourage them to market their games more, which will market the sport more, because they know that their financial ties are to that, like it is now with like Alabama, but they're competing against schools that already have a ton of money. The donor method would go away. You can donate to the school, but if you want to donate to athletics, then you're going to have to, if you're going to donate to the athletic programs, you're going to have to donate to a general scholarship fund, not to a specific sport like they have now, which the system basically tailors football, tailors basketball to continue to grow. But these other sports are going to need the money more than those as we head into a trying time. So by enabling donors and people to donate money to the causes, we're going to start to see more revenue sharing among the different sports. And what we're going to end up doing is hopefully trying to find this blend in there where maybe we put quotas on it, maybe we put maximum dollar values. We'll start to see how people want to invest their money if revenue sharing becomes a thing, because revenue sharing works in a lot of ways. It legislates parity into the sport. It enables only the best of the best to be able to compete. Is it going to be a different business model than what we've seen over the previous 20 or so years? Absolutely. But at the same time, we're going to start to see a digression of various, I guess the best way to put it is that there's a digression among the various conferences and universities within those conferences to find a new way to operate in a free and open market for all, which I guess is the spirit of capitalism, but also blending a little bit of the revenue sharing ideology that comes from other professional sports leagues that, if you look at basketball, you look at football, it legislates parity much better when you have that revenue sharing. And it's not a totally free market in which once you get the money, it's impossible to compete with you because the other people, the only way to get there is by getting the money. And if you look at a case like Clemson, it's going to take a special case for you to compete with the Alabamas, to take them head on and be able to compete in that same arena. So the new NCAA idea, and this may be a series, we'll see what happens here. The three standard points here: free and open market. You can pay players; they can get their compensation the same way any other industry would. Free and open market. So yeah, free and open market. Industry revenue sharing among conferences, and revenue sharing among donors and various sports. Those are the three big ideas that the new NCAA would correct. If there are any wealthy investors watching this, please contact me and feel free to send me money in order to build the foundation for the new NCAA.